sits with him and mentions that Jin has done a lot of things from Arkan to Bement in a short time. He asks if that's why Jin came to inform him about potential internal movements within the Zippel family due to the death of their second-in-command. Jin responds that Andre Zippel wasn't the true second-in-command, acknowledging his eldest sister's strength, but pointing out that Andre, as the vice head of the only family capable of overpowering Runkandle, was lacking. His father agrees, noting that Andre Zippel was indeed just the vice head, not the second-in-command. He mentions that there's someone else in power after Keliark, but he can't disclose further information about it to him. Meanwhile, Jin expresses gratitude for confirming his suspicion, mentioning that his father hasn't been informed of the most crucial fact yet. His father inquires about this fact, and Jin responds that they utilized a peculiar artifact. His father seeks clarification on what he means by an artifact, and Jin confirms that it's the Devil's Stone, as referred to by Andre Zippel. Jin explains that based on the information he gathered, it's a replica of the Origin Stone, an object crafted by the Lords long ago. His father then asks about the Devil's Stone, and whether Murakhan has explained it. Jin confirms that he knows about it, and also knows that his father can use mana. His father asks if Jin thinks he can conceal this information. Jin acknowledges that he assumed his father would know, but didn't realize his father also knew about Murakhan. His father chuckles and mentions that what he said about Murakhan was a guess, which Jin confirmed foolishly. Creon says Moth Runkandle and laughs, remarking on how they've reduced the Great Black Dragon to a mere cat, finding amusement in the situation. Continuing, his father acknowledges the significance of the information about the imitation of the Devil's Stone that Jin has acquired, and suggests that he should also discuss this with Luna. Jin considers the dangerous potential of that power, unsure how far the Zippel family has developed it, and wonders if the rulers of the Black Sea are aware of this. He thinks about visiting the Black Sea to find out more. His father indicates that while he will overlook Jin's violation of the rules this time, he expects something in return, and asks him to share one thing he desires. Jin requests that no other member of the Runkandle family be allowed to enter the independent city, Tikan, for a while. His father inquires about the place he has secretly settled in, and Jin confirms it's Tikan. He agrees to the condition, but mentions that he must pass a test given by the hidden master of Tikan, the noble sword Kashmir, to prove his allegiance. Jin adds that he won't permit any other Runkandle family member to enter Tikan without his permission if he succeeds. His father sets a 1-year time limit to see if he can prove his worth and acquire the trust of Kashmir, who had previously declined the position of a Runkandle teacher. Kashmir arrives and concurs with the decision, and his father confirms that's how it will be done. After a while, Kashmir contemplates that this person is the world's strongest knight, Chiron, and wonders if he can be called the most dignified person of mankind. He feels scared just by looking at him. He acknowledges that he is Jin's guest, and sees no need to fear Chiron. Chiron acknowledges Kashmir as the noble sword. Kashmir requests him to drop the noble sword title, and just call him Kashmir. Feeling embarrassed by such formalities in front of Chiron, Jin calls his father, who encourages him to speak. Jin explains that his relationship with Kashmir is akin to a shared destiny, as he has proven his connection with Kashmir, and it's time to fulfill his promise. Kashmir thinks about young Master Jin's choice of words regarding Tikan. There are 2 scenarios. First is Chiron suggests that Tikan belongs to the Runkandle family, and the second that Tikan and Runkandle can become unified in such a manner. Kashmir Alfrain ponders about this, acknowledging that Tikan's independence is at stake now. Chiron accuses his son of fooling him. He is referring to the test he set for Jin to earn the trust of Kashmir in 1 year, which Jin had already earned before coming here. Jin interrupts, refuting the accusation, insisting that he was merely fortunate. Chiron acknowledges this, and declares that henceforth no Runkandle member can enter Tikan without Jin's explicit permission. He expresses gratitude to his father, and exits. Chiron instructs Jin to leave if he has nothing further to discuss, as he has private matters to address with Kashmir. Jin agrees to wait outside the mansion. Kashmir shakingly requests a moment to address Sir Jin, and Chiron invites Kashmir to have a brief conversation. Kashmir acknowledges the honor of speaking with Chiron. On the other side, Daytona and Haytona run toward Jin and ask if he is all right. He looks at them and asks why the Tona brothers are here. Daytona asks why he would do something like that, and asks if father said he'd let him live. Jin asked if they could please do him a favor. They ask what favor he needs, and Jin replies it's nothing serious. The cadets in his faction take care of them until he gets back. Daytona asks what does he mean by his faction. Does that mean he won't get executed? Jin walks away and asks when the brothers ever get worried for him. Anyway, He's counting on them. Haytona says the same as always, that he's carefree after meeting Father, and Daytona agrees with him, saying, as always, he's a bit scary while they both look at him. Jin leaves the palace where he calls Luna. He says she needs to head over to Father, because he says he has a few questions about that day. Miyu calls out to him, questioning if he's disregarding the current situation and accusing him of ignoring them. He apologizes, stating that the issue is important, making it challenging for him to discuss. Miyu demands to know how he can act in such a way. Kashmir comes out of the castle, and Jin asks if his talk went well. Kashmir confirms that yes, it went well, much to his relief. Miyu questions what he is doing, noting that he entered a while ago and asking how he dares to stand in Runkandle's garden. Runtia intervenes, instructing them to stop, as it seems like the head has finished what he needs to do. She then puts her sword back, indicating that they no longer need to take things further. Jin expresses gratitude for his eldest sister, for her hard work, and stating that he's always indebted to her. Luna reassures him that it's fine, and that he just needs to thank her. He replies by thanking her for helping him. Luna inquires if he is leaving now, to which he affirms that yes, he's planning on putting his all into training for a while. She bids him to take care, and he responds by saying that he'll see her again, along with his eldest sister and older brothers. 1 month later, the scene shifts to the underground training hall in Kashmir's mansion, where Kashmir reflects that in the 30th spar between Jin and Fid, Jin suffered his 30th defeat. Jin requests one more chance, expressing his desire for a 31st attempt. In the year 1795, at the beginning of August, the Zippel family officially announces the deaths of Andre and Valletta. However, since they didn't disclose the cause of their deaths, numerous rumors began to circulate. Rumors suggested they were killed due to internal political strife, while others claimed they died in a conflict with a cold group. Another rumor mentioned their murder as a result of upsetting the Emperor of Beemont. However, the most credible rumor was their demise in a confrontation with the Runkandle family. People began to speculate about an impending war between the Zippel family and the Runkandle family, debating whether sword or magic would prevail. Meanwhile, an individual with yellow hair reports that today the prince from the Southern Kingdom and 5 second-grade mercenary groups have requested support and sent gifts. Chiron instructs to return the gifts and accept the requests, also providing a decent sword to the Southern Kingdom and ensuring the prince ascends to the throne later. The person with yellow hair confirms they will send an 8-star guardian knight. Chiron remarks that all of this stems from the youngest causing trouble on one of the Beemont's deserted islands. He criticizes the youngest for already exerting control over the family. He summons Khan, telling him that he would leave for the Black Sea again. If Kashmir sends a letter, he is to bring it to Chiron without delay. Khan acknowledges his understanding of the instructions. On the other side, Jin practices with his sword and thinks that when he swings it for the 10,000th time, it needs to feel like the first, but he still feels lacking. He acknowledges that if it weren't for Sister Luna, he would have died there. Reflecting on the 15 years after his regression, he notes that he has reached the 5-star level in both swordsmanship and magic, and he's close to reaching that level in shadow energy as well. However, he believes that thinking about future events, he still needs to become stronger. He believes that within the 5 years his father has given him, he needs to become so strong that he can surpass his other siblings. Kashmir intervenes, asking the young master to stop, and advises that if he continues like this every day, even with the gifted physique of the Runkandle family, he'll be left with nothing. Jin asks why Enya and Kashmir are here. Enya notices that his hands are all ripped and asks what she should do since his blood is dripping. Then she grabs his hand. Kashmir acknowledges that he must be impatient. Kashmir comments that although there will be no one at his age who can match him, his future opponents won't be normal. But Jin, being impatient, is the biggest poison. He explains that in the end, it'll make him backtrack on the path he's walking. Jin admits that he's ashamed, and knows that too. But it's not easy. Enya uses her healing magic to heal his hands. Kashmir reassures him that it's not something to be ashamed of, since he's completing an amount of training that no one can do in a day. Rather, it's amazing. He suggests changing his training to something that'll calm him down. Jin asks for training that'll calm him down, and Kashmir replies that it's sparring with someone much stronger than him. Jin asks if Kashmir is talking about himself. Kashmir responds by asking what Jin thinks. Even though he has recently been showing his lacking side, he takes out his sword, breaks a wall, and introduces himself as the Noble Sword. Kashmir suggests sparring when Jin can deflect that. And for now, he should be satisfied with sparring with Takan's strongest guard. Fid arrives and mentions that it's been a while since he has seen her boss's sword. Kashmir sets a goal of defeating him within 6 months, using all of his skills in swordsmanship, magic, and shadow energy. Julia asks Fid if he is going to fight with brother Jin, to which Fid responds that they are not fighting, but solidifying their friendship. Julia inquires about what that means and expresses her dislike for fighting. Fid then asks Julia whom she would cheer for if he and brother Jin needed to fight, and Julia replies that she would cheer for brother Jin, of course. Fid questions what's going on and tells Julia that she needs to be on her guardian's side at times like this. Meanwhile, Jin reflects that, excluding her physical ability, Fid doesn't appear that strong. Julia states that her brother Jin is weak, and they always said that they always had to be on the weaker side. Fid laughs and tells Jin not to mind, noting that Julia can't lie. Jin responds that it's fine. Fid then suggests setting their sparring time after he finishes work every day for 6 months. Jin questions what he means by every day, and expresses concern that he's taking up too much of his time. Fid laughs again and reassures him not to worry, since it'll go by quickly. 2 days later, the scene shifts to Jin and Fid preparing for their fight. He considers whether he is a skilled fighter. Fid begins by stating that he has something to say before they start. Fid used to work for Bemin's Special Affairs Division, and in this fight, he won't hold back, so he shouldn't be discouraged, even if he loses. Jin reflects on the 6-month training period, realizing there was a purpose behind it, and resolves not to be careless. As Fid rushes to punch him, Jin almost smashes into a wall, but manages to block his attack. He then transforms into his monstrous form, drawing his sword and launching an attack, but Fid evades it skillfully. Fid says they need to call a medic, and then punches Jin, sending him flying through the air later in the day. Fid expresses surprise that he managed to attack twice on the first day, noting that he didn't exert much force in his initial attack. He asks if Jin was attempting to weaken the ground before their spar. Jin confirms this, saying Fid realized his tactic toward the end. Fid inquires about the light during their fight, identifying it as the magic he had never seen before. Jin explains it as an ancient spell called a flash veil, which he coated his sword with before they began. However, he acknowledges that such tricks may not be effective. Fid questions his use of the term tricks, suggesting they are more accurately termed as strategies. Fid reflects that Jin's ability to defeat stronger opponents is likely not solely due to luck. He reflects that the opportunity and change were created through detailed calculations and predictions, and he could appreciate it because he used it during a spar. However, if it had been an actual fight, he could vividly imagine the faces of his opponents. This is the first time Jin has suffered a complete loss in this life, despite using every tactic possible. Jin wonders if it's because Fid is from Bemin's Special Affairs Division. To defeat him in 6 months, he'll have to go up against him consistently during that time. He finds this prospect exciting. Kashmir writes down a letter. 1 month later, on the 22nd of September, 1795, in an unprotected area on the continent's east, known as the Black Sea, Khan defeats a monster. He bows down in front of Chiron and introduces himself as Guardian Khan. He presents Kashmir's letter, which arrived 10 days ago. Chiron takes the letter, opens it, and begins reading it. The letter expresses regret for not being able to adequately convey the writer's deep appreciation and gratitude. It mentions that it's currently night in Takan, describing the stars shining brightly in the dark velvet sky as if they are singing praises of Sir Chiron's greatness. The letter is signed by Kashmir, a humble swordsman. Chiron comments that he had instructed Kashmir to report about the youngest, indicating that Kashmir seems to be a very sensitive person and writes like a girl. He decides to advise Kashmir to be more focused when reporting about the youngest in the future. He mentions he has been keeping track of the youngest's progress on the isolated island and notes that the youngest has been consistently defeated by Kashmir's knight. He describes how the number of hits increased from 3 in the first spar to 40 in the 30th, and the letter details the 40th spar, where the youngest withstood over 120 hits, showing a significant improvement. Khan comments on the losses the youngest has faced and wonders if there is amusement in the youngest master's defeats. Chiron explains that Kashmir's knight is from Bemin's Special Affairs 2nd Division, suggesting that it's not an opponent the young master can handle with mere good fortune, and he congratulates Khan. He adds that in the 40th spar, the youngest withstood over 120 hits, indicating that the youngest has surpassed his limits. Chiron expresses regret, stating that if the youngest were the firstborn, He would have handed over the family to him without hesitation. But it's unfortunate. Khan notes that this is the first time Chiron has spoken personally about the heir and who of his children will inherit the throne. Khan reflects that Joshua Rincandle's position is due to Luna stepping down, not a direct appointment by the patriarch. Khan believes Joshua is still too young and inexperienced for such a role. Chiron acknowledges Joshua's exceptional growth, but points out that suitability alone doesn't guarantee confirmation. Khan questions why Chiron says this, and Chiron responds that he isn't being callous. Rather, he's noting Joshua's gentle nature. Chiron acknowledges that Joshua's past is different from his own, and emphasizes the importance of being able to sever family ties when necessary. Chiron says, yes, that's who a Runcandle is, and he understands. Chiron says, return for now. Khan agrees. Chiron asks why a letter that arrived 10 days ago arrived so late. He replies with his apologies, stating he tried his best to hurry, but due to the extreme number of monsters, he was delayed. Chiron slashes his sword, and waves of monsters. Chiron says he guesses this will do. He reminds him to arrive a day earlier next time, to which Khan agrees. On the other side, Fid remarks that today is the 93rd day, and he's an amazing young master, considering how much he has already accomplished. Jin laughs and says he needs to work hard to finish this within 6 months. Fid asks about having dessert upstairs and mentions hearing that Latri made ice cream. Jin declines, stating he still has something he needs to do, and Fid inquires if he will be doing it today too. He replies he still has a long way to go and grabs his sword. Fid thinks he feels this every time they spar. Young Master Jin's growth is abnormal. He thinks it's probably because his aura and magic power are growing simultaneously. And the thing that makes that possible is that black power that connects his aura and magic power. He thinks that a power obtained by making a contract with a lord, how amazing, and thinks even if that power is amazing, it is only meaningful because of Jin's endurance. Fid says Jin is a genius who works hard and at this rate forgets about 6 months. Fid thinks he'll be defeated by tomorrow. The scene shifts to the next day when Fid and Jin practice again, and Fid says that's an obvious move while he runs to attack Jin, who blocks his attack. Jin counters an attack from Fid, and he gets hurt. He asks if he is okay, and Fid says he's all right. However, it's been a while since he has gotten such an injury. Jin says he will go get Enya, and thinks that was a stab he could have dodged, and he was lucky in this match. Fid thinks he was careless when his sight was blocked by the shadow energy. He thought Jin would make the same movements, so he didn't consider his next move. He has gotten sloppy after retiring, saying to Jin that he lost before the time he promised him. Jin says no, it's fine, and he thinks it's better to call this fight a draw. It's a victory he can't accept. Meanwhile, Fid acknowledges that he knew Jin would say that. He apologizes because he was careless and discourteous towards him. Enya uses her healing energy to heal him, but they can't turn a blind eye to this. He says if it had been him from 3 months ago, even if Fid had been careless, would it have turned out like this? Fid acknowledges that Jin has grown a lot, citing his endless ambition, fighting spirit, and talent to make that growth possible. He believes he will soon become a 6 star in both aura and magic. The scene shifts to the 1st of December in 1795, where Jin Runcandal asks Murakan why he bought so many popsicles on such cold days. Murakan replies that cold things usually taste best when it's cold outside, and Strawberry Pie said she wanted to eat it. Jin asks if he's planning on making Jilly's stomach explode. Kashmir arrives and calls Jin, asking if it would be okay to talk about work for a moment. Kashmir mentions Viscal Ibriano, who is the interim head of the Ibriano family, the only talent in a family that was falling due to a lack of talented people. He says he requested information about him. Before he starts his explanation, he asks if Jin knows about the group called Kinzalo. Jin says he came across them during a mission when he was a cadet, so the conversation will be shorter. He states that he's not certain, but Viscal Ibriano may be a part of the Kinzalo group. He mentions that Ibriano visits the Carano Principality once a week, and every time he does, he looks for a workshop that goes by the strange name Explosion is Art. He adds that the owner of the workshop is Boubary Gaston, and from what he found out, Gaston is an executive of Kinzalo. Suggesting they have a close relationship, Kashmir interjects, mentioning that at this point there is a possibility, especially since they know that Viscal Ibriano brings bread and food every time he goes there. He suggests that Gaston is in a higher position, which is why he stepped forward during the banquet. He reflects on Kinzalo, noting that he thought it was just an extreme political group, but for an 8-star fighter to rely on such a place, and people, raises questions. He thinks about what those idiots did in his past life, and he can understand why they couldn't recklessly touch the Runcandle family, the Zipple family, or Bamint. Julia screams that she wants to play with Jin. Murakan tells the kid to stop because Jin is busy, so she should wait a while. However, Julia grabs his hair and calls Jin. Not focusing on his surroundings, Murakan hits an ice pillar. Filled with rage, he grabs the ice pillar and throws it at Kashmir, who looks behind surprised. Julia asks why he is doing that to her guardian. Jin calls Kashmir and asks if he still doesn't have information about Spider-Hands. Kashmir replies that Spider-Hands has more secrets than he originally thought. Although the elite troops of the Seven Colors are trying, there are no traces from before he became the head of Tessin, as if someone purposely erased information about him. Jin thinks maybe he shouldn't have killed him, and acknowledges that he understands, thanking him for his hard work. Kashmir mentions that the informants worked hard and that he will dig further into Kinsalow. He added that he would inform him if he gets any further information about Spider-Hands. Jin expresses his perpetual gratitude and indebtedness to him. Kashmir replies that it's nothing, but if he's truly grateful, he should play with Julia. Jin acknowledges the suggestion, but mentions that it's a little difficult to do that today, as it's almost time for his sparring session, and asks if Kashmir will join too. Kashmir responds that it sounds great. He is curious about young Master Jin's growth as well. Jin assures him that he can look forward to it, and mentions that he has recently started to realize something. Fid started to question why is Kashmir here. Kashmir asks if he is not allowed to come, and explains that young Master Jin told him to come, so he did. Fid responds that he's allowed, but he doesn't want him to see him lose. Kashmir was surprised about Fid's response. Fid mentions that he thinks today will be the last day for young Master Jin. Fid comments that it would be great if he could remember him as a good opponent in the far future. Jin asks what he means by a good opponent, and states that he will remember him as a good teacher and friend. Kashmir ponders what he is saying and thinks it has only been a little over 3 months, but Fid is already going to lose. Fid asks if they will then start. While Jin stands still, he focuses his mind to perform a summon. Kashmir stares speechless. Jin summons a phoenix there. Kashmir considers that 6-star mages obtain the authority to make contracts with anyone. However, no one knows which phoenix they will end up contracting with, as mages can only open the dimensional gate to the world of fire. He reflects that because mages can only open the dimensional gate to the world of fire, the choice lies with the phoenix. And because of that, mages desperately want a special phoenix to choose them. He thinks about the rarest phoenix among the special phoenixes, which is the phoenix that uses blue fire. Kashmir expresses that it's impossible and asks if he made a contract with Tess. He thinks about Tess, the mages who have been able to summon Tess and were the best mages of their times. Jin asks Fid if they will start, and he replies that he's coming, and they both get ready to fight. Meanwhile, Fid considers the 5-star level fire magic. But that's not all. The flames carry a strange power. If he touches it, his body will become heavier. He thinks it's pressure, a power that pushes him down. If he gets hit by that, the amount of stamina he uses will increase. He needs to finish this quickly and thinks he can maintain test pressure for another 3 minutes. He plans to finish it by that time, but Jin attacks him. Fid gets hurt and thinks it's a sword attack, but then realizes it's wind magic. Jin thinks that although Fid uses a variety of movement patterns, they all have one thing in common: dominance. He thinks Fid wants to dominate his opponent no matter the situation, and speculates that he's probably trying to regain dominance right now. As he looks at him, he decides to use long-range attacks, but Fid escapes from his attacks. He uses fire magic on him, but he quickly sidesteps and escapes from that attack. He then holds his sword and runs to attack. He considers if he should dodge, but then realizes that if he does, he will have to keep defending against young Master Jin's attacks. So Fid decides there's no helping it. Fid asks if he's trying to show that he's a magic swordsman, while Jin uses his blue mana and attacks him. Fid exclaims that he finally got him and asks if he's not here, stating that there's no way he could escape his weapon pressure. Jin he's behind him again as he punches Fid so hard that he vomits blood. Fid concedes the match, acknowledging young Master Jin's win. Jin screams at Kashmir to call for Enya. Kashmir told the dragons that Jin finally won the duel against Fid. Murakan shocked and asks him to repeat what he said. Kashmir confirms that young Master Jin has defeated Fid in a match after summoning a phoenix. Murakan remarks that he knew Jin would defeat Fid, who was from Bamin's Special Affairs Division, but to do it in just 3 months. Then he stops to think, saying, "No, not that." Jin summoned what? He grabs Kashmir, who replies, "Pardon." A phoenix. He summoned Tess. They all become shocked to hear this. Fid admits that he went overboard and used an aura shield to win, but it instead became his downfall. He expresses surprise that he would be defeated by an attack from behind twice, and asks when he planned that. Jin responds that he planned it from the first match, admitting that saying so might make him seem very arrogant, as he pours some water over his head. Fid laughs and agrees. Jin thanks him so much for what is done. He replies that it was fun for him too, and asks if he realizes how proud he is. He then questions how he feels about defeating someone from Bement's special division before turning 16. Murakan arrives there and calls for Jin. Murakan instructs him to call Tess right now quickly, and Jin summons Phoenix. Quick-and-Tell bows down and greets the Master of the Flame. Murakan acknowledges that it has been a while. Phoenix unexpectedly hits him with his beak at his face, and Murakan interrupts, asking why he did that, and reminding Phoenix that he can speak casually, as he's a free entity. Murakan started apologizing. Kashmir experiences a refreshing feeling, maybe because he was seeing Murakan getting beaten up by a bird, and Quick-and-Tell shaking in her place. The bluebird whispered some words to Murakan and told him to pass them on to Jin. Murakan insists seriously that Jin should recall this elder quickly. Jin agrees, saying okay, sure, and recalls Phoenix back. Murakan questions why he is hitting him seriously. Murakan responds, saying that Jin would want to know why the great Murakan is sucking up to a bluebird. He explains that's not the real form of Tess. Its real form can only be seen in the Fire Realm. Jin asks what the Fire Realm is, and wonders if that is the name of the world where the phoenixes are. He confirms that there is another world, and although this is the first time Jin has heard about the Fire Realm, it's not surprising, as it's a term that only the lords and dragons use. He explains that it's a term they used to call it comfortably, and not even the highest-ranking lords know the real name of that place. Jin asks if the lords don't know if that means that place is beyond the authority of the lords. He confirms that it's correct, which is why even the Flame Lord Shinu can't use the flames of the Fire Realm. What he's about to say next is the important part. He continues by stating that there was a time when several lords, including dragons like Quick-and-Tell and him, left the Fire Realm. But a few lords started to get on Tessa's nerves. He explains that was the day when they saw Tessa's true power. The enraged Tess burnt 5 lords and several dragons on the spot. Jin asks, wait, is Tess that incredible? Then how strong does one have to be to bring out that power? Murakan asserts that it's impossible, no matter how strong he is, and explains that he can't bring out all of his strength. He emphasizes that it doesn't matter who he is. He can't perfectly wield someone else's power from another world. He compares it to a penalty, explaining that's why the lords who came to this world couldn't do anything, and it's the same reason why Tess cannot use his full power in this world. However, he adds that in saying that someone like him would be burnt alive, Murakan questions how such a dangerous old man can fight as soon as he is summoned, and asks if he knows how surprised they were, fearing that if Tess gets angry, he will burn Jin alive. Then Murakan clarified that if he was going to do that, he wouldn't have chosen Jin in the first place. Murakan relays a message from the elder, saying that he likes Jin very much and congratulates him. He contemplates that Tess is someone greater than he thought, even greater than Shinu, the Fire Lord, who controls all the fire in the world. He considers Tess's power against Shinu's contractor, Keliark, and the guardian dragon, Kajina. He concludes that fire of any type will not work against Tess. However, having Tess during the Run Candle and Zippel families fight will be of big help due to his blue flames. The scene shifts to the 2nd of January in 1796, where Chiron mentions that he got chosen by Tess, finding it quite interesting, but he's not interested in phoenixes. He notes that this is all he wrote about Jin's swordsmanship. He explains that he allowed Jin to use magic and shadow energy, but he's a Run Candle. He then calls Khan, asking about Ron Haran having a grandson. Khan acknowledges that he did receive some information about the Haran family's grandson a couple of days ago. Chiron expresses his luck, and Khan agrees, stating that it's about the Cosmos competition request, which is to assassinate a pirate participating in the competition. He notes that on the list of participants, Dante Haran registered with an alias. He recalls that the Cosmos competition is a fighting competition hosted by pirates, and he remembers that 10 years ago Mary Run Candle was the runner-up. He mentions that it was young Miss's first defeat, and tells Khan to send the youngest there too. He acknowledges that there are lots of eyes watching, so he won't be able to use magic and shadow energy. He will have to use his sword to win. He predicts that in a match with a genius who is polishing his swordsmanship, the youngest will realize something. As a Run Candle, he needs to prove himself with his sword. After a while, Kashmir arrives and politely asks Jin if he may take a look at a paper. Jin inquires about the paper's content, and Kashmir explains that it's an application to enter the Cosmos competition. Jin expresses surprise, questioning why he suddenly wants to enter a pirate playground. Kashmir responds that it's something he prepared for Jin, considering how hard he has been working recently. According to the 7 colors, it seems that Dante Haran from the Haran family is participating in the competition. Kashmir further explains that Dante Haran's grandfather, the current patriarch of the Haran family, Ron Haran, used to be on equal footing with Sir Chiron before becoming the head. He adds that Dante Haran is Ron Haran's most treasured grandson, and asks if Jin isn't curious to find out how strong he is. Jin takes a moment to think, and then asks if he really needs to participate, as he has no interest in doing so. Kashmir, flustered, kept begging Jin, please think about it carefully, as he is the next head of the Haran family, and Jin won't get another chance to clash swords with him. Jin acknowledges that since Kashmir is going so far as to do all of this, he has no choice but to participate. Kashmir responds with thanks, stating that Jin made the right decision. Jin realizes that he gets it now. He remembers when his father requested to speak to Kashmir separately. He wonders if Chiron asked him to do this behind his back, and thinks that for him to fight against the grandson of the Haran family on purpose means that swordsmanship is the top priority, which seems like Chiron's doing. Jin also notes that Kashmir seems like he has his hands tied up in this situation. Kashmir mentions that he must leave tomorrow, and that the timing is a little tight. Jin asks why so suddenly, and Kashmir replies by saying, then please have a safe trip, and walks away. Jin tries to stop him, saying, wait, sir. The scene shifts to Balado Empire, an island in the south, where a person reflects that this is the first time he has done something on his own since he traveled to Mehmet, and it's a place even more sickening than Mehmet. He considers the Cosmos competition a fighting competition in a place like this. It's a competition where he can kill his opponent, and there are no restrictions on weapons. He can even assassinate or poison his opponent before the match. He wonders if the patriarch there is crazy too for allowing a grandchild of the great Haran family to participate in such a competition in such a place. He concludes that regardless of the reason, getting to compete against him once is a good thing, and he thinks it will be a valuable experience. Suddenly we see Veridan. He remarks that this place reeks as usual, and declares, all right, let's have some fun. Some drunk guy asks who this person is, and Jin responds that he has come to enter the competition, states that applications are closed, and tells Jin to get lost, even suggesting it would be better if he died on the way back. Jin counters, saying he is sure he heard that applications were open until sunset today. The drunk dismisses this, saying he's not in the mood to take applications right now, and asks if Jin does not understand. He tells Jin that he's incredibly busy and to stop annoying him and get lost. He then questions what Jin is doing as Jin throws some coins at his face, knocking him down. He asks if this is enough and tells to put his name down. The man gets excited and shouts loudly, acknowledging that Jin is intense, but he likes it. He agrees to put Jin's name down and writes it on paper, then shows Jin the paper, informing him that he's in Group 13. We found out that this is the pirate King Cosmos, the owner of this island. He tells Jin to take it, as the people inside will kindly guide him and welcome him to the competition with romance and love. After a while, a person wearing a head cover takes the paper from Jin and announces Group 13 Jin Gray. The king wrote that they pair him with someone decent. If there isn't anyone suitable, then he doesn't care if they feed Jin Gray to the sharks. He comments that this year is full of young guys and mentions another individual, a rascal who beat up the captain. He expresses regret that they are not in the same group, as he wants them to fight each other. However, he wishes Jin Gray good luck and suggests that they might meet in the finals, although he acknowledges that Jin Gray will need a lot of luck. He then points out the area for Group 13, indicating that Jin Gray should head there. He adds that he'll see Jin Gray later, if he survives. Jin asks about his room, and the person responds by telling him to figure it out himself. Jin wonders if there weren't enough rooms to begin with, and notes that there are 2 or 3 people per room. He speculates that the organizers want participants to fight each other in the cramped rooms, making it more like a survival game than a fighting competition. Another person asks who Jin is, and questions if he doesn't see that there are already 3 people in the room. The person tells Jin to get lost, while Jin declares that he's going to count to 3, and by the count of 3, everyone should leave. He begins counting 1, 2, 3. Jin fights back and then a person enters the room. Jin grabs his sword and asks who wants to stay with him. Some punks rush to attack him, telling him to die, but Jin counterattacks. He remarks that even though this place is a lawless zone, it doesn't compare to Mammoth, and for the time being, he won't be sleeping. The person with the head cover arrives again and expresses annoyance, asking if Jin plans on killing everyone before the match starts. Jin responds by saying that this was just the event before the main course. The person with the head cover replies that he thought Jin was just an arrogant idiot, but as the captain said, he's an intense guy. He explains that there was a reason why he said to put him with the decent guys. He mentions that Groups 1 and 2 will start their matches soon, and he will be fighting some of those guys later, so Jin can go and watch the matches if he wants. He invites Jin to come with him, offering to personally escort him. He adds that wielding a sword around in the spectator's stand is forbidden, so Jin should just sit and watch comfortably. Jin thinks this is great and observes that many people have come to watch. He doesn't think there will be anyone here who will recognize his face, but he realizes he should have paid more attention to his disguise. A person asks if the person heard the rumors about half the guys in Group 13 getting knocked out, and questions if he put a bet on one of them. He then asks who did that. The person clarified that besides that incident, among the participants in the competition, he heard that there was a reserve flag bearer from the Run Candle family. A person in a green dress asks what a Run Candle reserve flag bearer is and questions why a Run Candle would come here. His friend responds that he heard this information from the Cosmos pirate executives while drinking with them yesterday. He mentions a strong boy among the participants, and if the rumor is true, he is from the Run Candle family. The friend laughs and speculates that if it's true, the boy could be Daytona Haytona, or Jin. He adds that it would be great if it were Jin, considering how things were crazy when that young guy became a 5-star. He considers the possibility of it really being someone from the Run Candle family and thinks it's normal for them to know Jin's name, but it surprises him that they know about the Tona twin too. He reflects that it's about time the Tona twins' name got around. If they are participating, he decides that he'll find them and beat them up. Meanwhile, the fireworks started. Pirate King Cosmos arrives there and addresses all the ladies and gentlemen who have come to the arena. He asks if they haven't dropped dead from waiting and introduces himself as the Pirate King Cosmos with a laugh. The crowds kept cheering for him. He remarks on the number of people who have come to fill up his pockets and comments that they don't know how to look after themselves. He suggests stopping the small talk and getting started. He mentions that there are 14 participants per group and there are 13 groups, totaling 182 martial artists on standby. He announces that the main character of the first match was in the Octo Finals and introduces the cutie fighter from the Shark Pirates, Mentees, as his opponent, someone participating for the first time this year, and questions what's behind his pretty face and introduces the boy swordsman, Paul Mick. Jin Runkendell remarks that he's quite young, noting the presence of many young participants this time, but considering his age, he finds it a bit too young. He wonders if the boy is 13 or 14 years old and thinks it's crazy to involve such a young boy. Suddenly, he remembers the person with a facial scar mentioning another participant, a boy, who had beaten up the captain. As they face each other, they announce that the battle will start. Paul Mick swiftly attacks Mentees and cuts his neck. Pirate King Cosmos questions what just happened and if anyone saw it clearly, expressing annoyance at the shark idiots. Another person remarks that the head just fell off, finding it nonsensical. Meanwhile, Jin observes that Mentees was beheaded in an instant with sword energy, guessing that this boy must be Dante Hiran. King Cosmos declares that the match ended abruptly, announcing Paul Mick as the winner. Veridin expresses excitement, calling it a real fight and saying he would place all his bets on Paul Mick. He cheers for Paul Mick, emphasizing his support for Dante Hiran. Jin wonders why Veridin is present. Hearing people shout for Paul Mick, one person expresses their intent to bet as well, while another encourages betting on Paul Mick. Veridin asks if they can't see that Paul Mick is the future, urging everyone to bet everything, even their life savings, on him. Jin considers whether Veridin is also on a mission, but he seems too engrossed at the moment to be on official business. If he were caught, it would lead to significant trouble, so he decides to pretend not to see him. Veridin notices Jin and greets him, mentioning that it's been a long time. Paul Mick looks at them and recognizes Veridin, recalling their encounter at the Zippel family's banquet. He's surprised to see such an open greeting in an unfamiliar place full of killers. Paul Mick also extends his hand and expresses his pleasure in seeing Veridin. Pirate King Cosmos approaches him and suggests listening to the winner before starting the next match. He asks Paul Mick how he feels about the victory. Paul Mick responds that he's glad to have eliminated one of the world's evils and hopes the defeated opponent doesn't reincarnate as a pirate in his next life. Pirate King Cosmos chuckles and places a hand on Paul Mick's shoulder, remarking that becoming a pirate isn't advisable for children, however saying such things might upset the pirates present. He acknowledges that Paul Mick appears young, but his swordsmanship suggests otherwise. The most plausible explanation is that he's a Hyran. Jin believes that winning will require using magic and shadow energy. Relying solely on swordsmanship won't suffice. He concludes that it's premature to make a judgment. He notes that starting from tomorrow, some groups will finish their matches, meaning he has 4 days until his turn. Until then, he must survive the nights here. The elder sits in his room and remarks that he didn't give it to him for him to play around with like that. It's an item that the future young patriarch will use when he absolutely needs to. He asks to please keep it in a safe place. On the other side, Veridin Zippel stands near him, waving his chain and apologizing, saying he feels much more confident with it in his hands. He then asks if that is why he was called over. The elder explains that every year around this time, a martial arts competition opens on one of the northern islands of the Belahu archipelago, known as the Cosmos Competitive Arena. He asks if perhaps he knows about the Cosmos Competitive Arena. Veridin Zippel starts lying that it's his first time hearing about it, and questions how he would know about such a martial arts competition held by a pirate. He laughs, feigning ignorance. The elder now knows where he disappears every year around this time. The elder mentions Dante Hyran, the future patriarch of the Hyran family, who attended last year's banquet and is participating again this time. He encourages him to take advantage of the opportunity to witness it firsthand. He emphasizes the level of the man he must overcome one day. On the other hand, Veridin Zippel arrives because he has heard something like that. He comments that it's great that he can make some side money as well, but wonder why there wasn't a single fun match for 2 whole days. He acknowledges it was great seeing Dante Hyran's skills, but finds the rest to be so-so. He expresses his disappointment in this year's competition, wondering where all the pretty good ones went. He looks at a list of candidates' names and sees Jin Gray's name. He asks who Jin Gray is, and ponders if this is actually Jin himself, realizing he didn't come just to watch. He finds the situation already so exciting. After a while, Jin observes that the surviving participants number 147, with 35 already dead, as he sits down exhausted from the fight. He notes that only 5 died during their matches, with the rest dying outside of the arena. He anticipates competitors from other groups bursting in soon, making it impossible to let his guard down even a little. He contemplates the consequences of falling asleep. Recalling his no-sleep training during his cadet years, however, holding out for 3 days in this barren place without hiding their presence is a new challenge. He surmises that they must be quite confident in their skills. Meanwhile, Paul Mick interrupts, acknowledging that it's rude to say this in their first meeting, but asking for a moment to speak. Jin thinks about Paul Mick, or rather Dante Hyran, while Paul Mick requests a moment to sleep and promises to stand guard the next day so Jin can rest. Jin asks what all this is about, suddenly coming out of nowhere. The person replied that he had been watching since yesterday, and it seemed like Jin Gray was a true martial artist, so please let me sleep. Jin says he can't even do the no-sleep training as he falls to the floor and falls asleep, stating that his family should have prepared him better for that. Jin thinks about the overwhelming smell of blood and how he's been pestered by quite a number of people. Meanwhile, an old man arrives outside and whispers to wait. He signals for them when to attack, but Jin catches him and attacks him with his sword. Jin asks if he didn't hear the rumors and says anyone who comes to this room ends up dead. A masked man says to wait. He knows Jin Gray has killed every one of the group's 13 guys, but they didn't come here to strike him. They came here for a different reason. He states that if Jin hands over Paul Mick, who just went inside, they will give him money. But another man shoots an arrow at him, but Jin blocks his attack. He grabs the arrow, looks at it, and asks if it is poison. Regardless of the situation, doing all this to a child is unacceptable. He doesn't know who's behind all this, but he is going to find out. Jin mentions the scoundrels chasing after him. They were underlings of the pirate One-Eyed Joe. He explains that the last guy spilled it before dying. They were planning to swindle some cash by kidnapping a run candle. Paul Mick thanks him for protecting him, someone without any relation to him, and expresses surprise at Jin's situation, wondering how Paul Mick got mistaken for those uncouth and ignorant individuals, the run candles. Paul says he should explain since he's indebted to him. He clarifies that he's nobility, that's why he was targeted. Although not a run candle, Jin should think of him as bement nobility. He apologizes for not being able to provide detailed information. Paul Mick expresses his gratitude, stating that he owes Jin his life, and asks how he can repay this debt, suggesting an eye for an eye, a life for a life. He promises that from this point on, whenever Jin is in danger, he will also protect him with his life regardless of the situation, and vows this in his honor. Jin responds by saying that Paul Mick should figure that out on his own. He needs to sleep first, so please wake him up before the Group 13 match starts. Paul Mick notes that the current protection is unrelated to the vow he made, so there's no need to worry. He thinks that although Jin seems cold on the outside, but he's a man who fought for him, someone he just met, but who already seems like a good friend. A man screams as he charges forward, but Paul Mick counterattacks and knocks him out. The king declares Paul Mick the winner as he finishes his opponent in one strike again, leading to cheers of Paul Mick's name from the crowd. They proclaim him as the victor, and also mention Jin Gray as another strong contender, with people shouting Jin's name as well after his match has ended. A person comments that Jin Gray is quite impressive and might even be stronger than Paul Mick. However, his friend disagrees, stating that Jin Gray is still no match for a reserve flag bearer from the Run Candle family. No one could face him, he says. Paul shouts at them, saying he is not a Run Candle. Another person mentions that this year's finalists seem to be those two kids, indicating that because of these young contenders, this year's competition is effectively decided. Another warrior arrives and suggests that although they may be decent, it's just two guys and they should gather their group and attack them. However, a person with a head cover intervenes, advising them to quit their plan as their group can't handle Jin Gray, whose nickname is the Lord of Death for a reason. He mentioned that he and Mick Paul shared the same room and asked if their plan would work. He told them that he was stopping them because they were quite popular and it would be troublesome if they all died before the matches started. They walk away, concluding that there's no helping it and that they should stop there. The warrior questions their decision, suggesting they leave, to which another person agrees, noting that according to the program, they can manipulate their wins so they don't face Jin Gray's or Paul Mick. They agree that they don't want to die there, and affirm that they are the only ones aware of this plan, emphasizing that Cosmos must never find out. Pirate King Cosmos slams his drink on the table and asks who's manipulating the winner, mentioning that plans were made behind his back. A person with a head cover asks what he plans to do, pointing out that the competition will become boring and the spectators will notice. Pirate King Cosmos responds that it's for the better to scrap the whole program, since Jin Gray and Paul Mick are heading to the finals. He explains that aside from those two, all the remaining participants will become sacrificial lambs, and he plans to increase the dividend rate as high as possible, to the point where people won't sleep if they don't bet. Pirate King Cosmos declares that there will be lightning speed from the winner's match to the finals, emphasizing the goal of making money. Meanwhile, the crowd continues to cheer Paul Mick's name repeatedly. Veridon Zippel arrives and remarks on one participant being a shocking supernova from the start, while the other is a Lord of Death steeped in blood since the beginning. He asks who he thinks will win when a masked man calls for Paul Mick, and his friend agrees, mentioning that Paul Mick's swordsmanship seems more refined. He asks if he also bet on Paul Mick. Veridon Zippel mentions that he bet 100,000 gold on Jin Gray. His friend points out that Jin Gray's winning factor is 3 times Paul Mick. If Jin Gray wins, will these pirates actually pay 300,000 gold? Veridon Zippel explains that Cosmos is a well-known pirate with several islands, so he can make a profit by selling them. Pirate King Cosmos, impatient, announces himself as the Pirate King Cosmos and urges them to hurry up and start calling for Paul Mick. Someone in the crowd shouts for Jin Gray, referring to him as the Grim Reaper of Group 13. And they start throwing wine mugs and rotten vegetables at him. Pirate King Cosmos thinks he's going to double the entrance fee next year. He suggests skipping the lengthy talks and calling out for them loudly. Paul Mick enters the battlefield in response to the call. He further announces that Paul Mick's opponent is the unknown young swordsman from Group 13, Jin Gray, who also joins the battlefield. He expresses his belief in Jin Gray and puts all his faith in him. Veridon Zippel encourages Jin Gray, saying, "Let's go," while Jin Gray wonders why he keeps telling him to do so. Pirate King Cosmos declares that there's no need to wait any longer and starts the match. Paul Mick pledges to fight properly and Jin Gray also draws his sword. Paul Mick acknowledges that he knew these simple techniques wouldn't work on Jin. Jin invites Paul Mick to attack as much as he wants. They both start fighting and rush to attack each other. Jin Gray and Paul Mick are attacking each other, trying to defeat their opponent. Jin Gray believes he made his initial attack swiftly, but he's conserving his energy now, only increasing his speed when necessary, which means he must match Paul Mick's pace. A person comments that witnessing such a fight in a place like this is incredible. Another person urges them on, questioning how this can be considered a mere children's fight. Paul Mick notes that Jin Gray is holding up well, but if he's concealing something, it would be wise to use it now. Jin Gray decides to increase his speed and launches an attack, but Paul Mick manages to evade it. A person shouts, "Yeah, Paul Mick, that's it. Get him. Send that scoundrel into the abyss just a little more." And Paul Mick looks at him and thinks that's right. That's his strength. Destructible swordsmanship and a blessed physique can make that possible. He considers his superior stamina as the foundation for that physique, purposely dragging out the fight using it. He acknowledges that Jin Gray is also using an alias, Jin. But if that's all he has, he's made a mistake. He then attacks Jin Gray, who counterattacks and pushes him away. Veridin observes them, and Jin Gray asks why he's suddenly calling him by his real name. Paul Mick wonders what just happened. If he had slashed Jin Gray, he would have been attacked by something else. Jin Gray realizes he has almost used his shadow energy and braces himself for a tough battle, asking if it's his turn now. He launches another attack, which Paul blocks. He thinks that's not a simple cut. All his sword attacks have the same force as his first swing. He considers he has no faults, and maybe he should have gone all out from the beginning. Paul Mick thinks no. If this continues, he might end up killing him. Jin says to stop messing around and asks who he thinks he's standing in front of for him to be hesitating. He declares that he's Jin and tells Dante Heiran not to make this fight shameful. Dante Heiran replies okay, acknowledging he's shown a shameful side of himself, and asks if he will fight him again as they resume their battle. Jin Gray and Paul Mick are fighting each other, trying to defeat one another. Jin Gray attacks him and pushes him away. Paul Mick shouts and runs to counterattack, but Jin Gray quickly attacks him again. Paul Mick just looks at his face and gets scared a little bit, trying to counterattack. Jin Gray thinks Paul Mick must be at his limit by now, and asks how he is still enduring. He considers Paul Mick a genius who appears once every few centuries, judged to be a talent blessed by the lords. However, Jin Gray notes that Paul Mick was born with a fragile and weak body, proving to be a lacking vessel for his talents. Jin Gray recalls how he has swum through hell because of the damned curse, which is how he knows Paul Mick or Dante Heiran. He remembers his lonely suffering through the seemingly eternal darkness and his despair when he glanced at his thin, bony body. Meanwhile, Jin Gray attacks him again, and he blocks the attack. He thinks about how he pushed himself to the brink of death to get to where he is now, and pushes Jin Gray back. He runs at him again in anger and thinks about Jin, Runcandle's 13th child, born with everything. He attacks him, and Jin blocks the attack. He thinks Jin has a blessed body, talent, and everything, but he feels desperation from him. He wonders why he is this pitiful and desperate, and considers if it is perhaps rage, because he is the youngest, and not in the line of succession. He dismisses this idea, thinking it is not because of some foolish reason, and that he just aims to become the strongest. He thinks about how long he has endured to get to where he is right now. They attack each other again, and he thinks he can't even recall anymore, pondering how many times he has fallen into despair and how many times he has given into despondency, while Jin Gray throws him away. He regains all his powers and reflects on how many times he has picked himself back up. Unable to recall any of those moments and charges back to attack him again, Jin Gray blocks his attack, counters, and sees Paul Mick starting to cough blood. Wondering what's happening, he notices Dante Heiran's body breaking, but Jin refrains from withdrawing his sword despite seeing cracks in Paul Mick's body. He considers it to be an insult to Paul if he stops the fight and pushes him back, apologizing and asking for him to understand as he attacks, bringing his sword near Paul Mick's neck. Paul Mick starts laughing, causing him to stop and look, finding the situation enjoyable. Paul Mick falls down, and Jin looks at him, shouting for the medic. Veridin Zippel swiftly approaches Paul Mick, checks him, and remarks that this situation is worse than he anticipated. He assures Jin not to worry, saying he'll ensure Paul Mick survives and begins his healing magic. However, Jin realizes it's too late. Paul Mick's condition is already beyond the point where magic can heal him. Not only are his bones affected, but nothing in his body, including his organs, is healthy. and his aura is running rampant. Jin understands that using healing magic in this state would only intensify Paul Mech's pain. Veridin Zippel instructs him to listen carefully and reveals his chain, saying it will be their secret. Another warrior arrives and advises against using it, saying it's not something that should be employed for anyone but the Patriarch. Veridin Zippel dismisses this, telling the warrior to cover them with his cape, which he does as instructed. Veridin Zippel remarks on the warrior's lack of tact, noting how he fails to read the room. When the Pirate King Cosmos sees the White Knight symbol, which belongs to the personal Patriarch Protection Squad, he immediately orders everyone to cover their ears and close their eyes if they want to live, to which everyone does. And Veridin comments that King Cosmos is actually aware of what will happen here to everyone if this is leaked out. Jin inquires Veridin Zippel about the object, to which Veridin Zippel responds affirmatively. He explains that it's something gifted to him by his clan relatively recently, and asks if Jin happens to know about the blood of Numerus. Jin recalls that Numerus was the Lord of Hope just before the founding of the Holy State Venkella, and was believed to have been wiped out in a particular event. He reflects on how Numerus left behind teardrops and 100 drops of blood as they were annihilated, with the tears allegedly reviving the dead and the blood instantly healing any diseases or injuries. He notes that at the time, it became of great interest to the public and was an object that no one even dared to price. He reflects on how major factions like Zippel once desperately searched for these artifacts, which now had become the legacies of a lord passed down only through legends. He mentions that he's going to use one of these artifacts now on Dante Hyran, wondering about the reasons behind it and questioning why Zippel and Hayran don't have a good relationship. He ponders why Zippel would go to such lengths for him. Meanwhile, Veridin retrieves a pill, asking if Dante Hayran would understand him, and places the pill in Dante Hayran's mouth. He comments that losing an equal is as sorrowful as losing a friend. As Dante Hayran swallows the pill, his body begins to heal, emitting a bright light. He regains consciousness, coughs, and opens his eyes. Veridin expresses happiness at seeing him, while Dante Hyran inquires about the situation, asking Veridin what he's doing there. Jin reflects on how the blood of Numerus instantly revived Dante Hyran, who is nearly dead, and considers that Veridin Zippel is using such a powerful tool for that purpose alone. Veridin Zippel mentions that the cost of using the blood of Numerus is immense, which he is aware of, tapping his head. Dante Haran asks about Numerus and how he could repay such a favor. Jin thinks this is more in line with what Veridin Zippel might demand. Veridin then states that first of all, Jin will buy a round of drinks after they finish everything. He insists that he will stick around this time and won't take no for an answer. Veridin adds that when Jin sees him elsewhere, he shouldn't act as if he doesn't know him. Did he get it? Jin reflects that Veridin, whom he initially thought was just an idiot, turns out to be rather cool. He says he'll consider Veridin's proposal. They gather in a hotel, and Veridin praises Jin for his remarkable actions when he is asked to choose one of the victory prizes, commenting on how spirited he is for taking both prizes. Jin says that he nearly died in this place, so taking both is only fair. Veridin chuckles and acknowledges that both of them almost died. Jin responds by saying that while he doesn't particularly need both prizes since the situation arose, he decides to give the bag of coins to Dante Haran. He mentions that it's as if Haran doesn't have money, but this gesture will be commemorative, and he plans to keep the coins framed. Veridin suggests giving something in return, catching Jin's attention as he examines a paper. Jin inquires if it's the treasure map he's only heard about in stories. Veridin questions whether Jin intends to gift him something so valuable. Jin clarifies that the map is his, and Veridin will only get the empty box, to which Veridin sarcastically thanks him. Jin then asks Dante Hayran a question, wondering why he didn't use his secret technique as instructed, emphasizing that he told him to give it his all. Dante Haran replies that he does know that Jin is also hiding something, so it would be unfair if he used all his skills while Jin doesn't. Jin acknowledges that he has good intuition, as expected, and denies that he was hiding anything. In response, Dante Haran offers to fight again, without hiding anything from each other. Veridin Zippel agrees, expressing his anticipation for the day they lead their own clans and face each other in battle. He jokes about them killing each other, but suggests that it might be better for them to settle down and maintain a friendly relationship. Jin remarks on the softness of Veridin Zippel's words, to which Veridin Zippel explains that he's merely stating that if anything goes wrong, it could lead to trouble, so they should be cautious and mindful of their actions. Dante Haran contemplates that even if they're sitting in a circle, clinking glasses together, It's inevitable that they'll face each other in battle when the time comes. He considers the paradox of being both an enemy and a friend, and they toast their drinks in a moment of camaraderie. Veridan wonders how the contradictory relationship will end. Then suddenly, he remembers something and mentions the Veridan impersonator, asking if the others have heard about it. Meanwhile, Pirate King Cosmos heads to his storage room and finds all his treasure missing, expressing frustration at the noble scoundrels who took everything. Dante Hyran questions how an impersonator could impersonate him in Zippel family territory, expressing surprise at their audacity. Veridan admits he doesn't know who it was, but acknowledges their boldness. Veridan explains that recently, due to what happened to Uncle Andre Zippel, their family's honor has been tarnished. He clarifies that he's not mentioning this for Jin's sake, and adds that the rumor about a run candle being involved isn't confirmed either. Jin inquires about Veridan's plan regarding the impersonator. Veridan responds that while he does need to catch them, he's considering hiring a high-ranking mage to search for them. Jin disagrees with this approach, suggesting that if it were him, he would use the rumor to improve his public image. He explains that publicly announcing the search for an impersonator in Zippel territory could make him appear weak and foolish, causing others to look down on him. Meanwhile, he mentions that he can catch the impersonator later. Veridan agrees, saying that now that he thinks about it, he's right, and they should discuss it upon his return. Jin asks if they will end the conversation here. Then Dante Hyran questions what's already settled, and Jin explains that if he stays any longer, he might start to like Veridan. Unlike the two of them, he has many other tasks to attend to. Veridan asks if this is related to the reserve flagbearer matter, and Jin confirms, saying yes, let's say it's because of that. Veridan Zippel replies all right, and he'll see him next time, calling him a friend as Jin walks away, questioning whose decision it is to make them friends.